Alrighty, so welcome to week 16 in CIT28, what I fondly call Intro to SQL. I haven't at this point had a chance to read your post from week 15, which I'm looking forward to reading. I am running a little late. That's why, not that you would know, but I'm working on a Saturday because that's sometimes how our weeks go, right? You just never know if you can fit it all into one week. But as we quickly become to the end, as we quickly come to the end of the semester, there's just some things that have come out in the technical interviews that I wanted to talk about because it is just good to know. And then I'm going to cover the writing part two, and then I'm going to have you do some graded work and then give you a heads up. That's my agenda for today. So one thing when you're creating an alias, right? So using the as keyword in naming a column, is there a difference, right? So is there a difference between single quotes and double quotes? And this is something as people are coming into the technical interviews, we're having a conversation about. I don't mark off if you don't know the answer, but I also realize it wasn't covered very clearly in the course. And so understand the following. When is it important? So if you're using an alias, right, as a column in some other future or some other part of your SQL, then you need to name it double quotes. Okay, or you need to give it a double quote, and then you can use that because then SQL says, oh, that's a column, and then do some other type of SQL function on it. But in this case, if you're not, then using single quotes is totally fine, right? But again, this shows if you use single quotes, but then you tried to, right? So using what's appropriate based on the query is really important because if you understand that, oh, you know what, I'm not going to use this alias later, then, it's fine to use a single. And so in some ways, it shows somebody else who's reading and understanding the SQL, how well you are writing and understanding that, but also just for your clarification, right? So best practices always use double quotes when you want to refer to it later. Now it says avoid, right? They're strings, not identifiers. So this gets to the idea of what we learned when we were doing relating around. So when we're doing double quotes, we're making it an identifier. But is it good? Is it fine to use a single quote? Sure, right? As long as you understand it's just a string and you're not going to use it later. Okay? So I said I'd cover that and I wanted to. So this week we finish up writing. So writing to databases. And the thing I'm going to give you the heads up before I even take a look at the instructions, which I just finished today, is that the part after the break that I offer, so many of you are taking that break, but the part after the break, I mean, it's all really important to understand and all helps you get through the problem set because I actually started looking already at the problem set for our last item in this course. So what's really important here is just to understand all of it, but pay a special attention to the triggers because you really start to see the functionality. So in programming land, we think of these as like a function. Like I can say on these conditions, do this, begin here, end here. And so as you learn more about programming, you can come to understand that as a block of a function block that you do something. But in this case, it's a good introduction, but in our problem set, which is the don't panic, it will be heavily used. And understanding it will really help you. Okay, so looking just at the instruction for the part two that I finished today, we let me just go to the top, right? So we continue working in that writing folder. Create. No, this is nothing new here, and then do the heading. But like we had to do for the part one, we are going to, in this case, and this is going to be as you get into start, you'll need to do the same thing where you copy this in. And I realized in writing the instruction, right, where I had you last week copy it into the schema file, I realized, and I need to make sure I update the instruction for this, is actually you can keep the other one there by doing commenting out. But if you don't, it's always there if you ever needed it. But, whichever way you want. Sorry, I'm rolling back past that as well. But in this case, we're doing the schema that allows us then with the cascading delete. Such a great thing to understand. Like, so when you do this delete, where we saw the two-step last week, now we get to learn about doing it in one step based on adding into our schema. And then that also setting that is important this week. And remember, when you set this pragma, I should know how to say it. This thing is session only. What that means is if you drop the session in SQL, you'll need to run it again. You can just run this with a semicolon here, and it'll just tell you if it's on or off. It's one of those, like the idea of, some of you actually wrote the donut schema using Boolean when it's not really natively implemented inside of SQLite, but you can include it there. It was really the idea of using a 0 and 1, an integer. But in this case, this is a command that uses that same concept. Okay? So, like I said, this is really good stuff to know how to do. And you're going to import another file, which is good. These imports, the more you get experience with these imports, the better. And then you'll do trim. You'll do some updates and then some grouping. Then after your break, you break into, I didn't plan that. After the break, you will get into triggers and soft deletes. And man, like I said, this is just so cool to learn about, I think. And again, keeping in mind, really understanding it. And then at the very end, talks about GDPR and ethical issues, so I definitely want you to reflect on that concept in your notes. And there's more notes than just these in there, but these are just the things I wanted to highlight. Okay, so that's your part 2. Now, turning our attention to the weekly reviews. I guess I want to reiterate something that I probably haven't talked about in a little while, and some of you may, and I almost shouldn't say this, but I'm going to anyway, is that like this has been a active development project. So what that means is, yes, have you all been the beta testers? Yeah. Is it probably good to beta test in a live class? Probably not. But as we all know, with some of the comments I suspect I'm going to see about my comments about AI, like we're all having to adapt to what this looks like in our particular areas. And in education, I mean, is there a real possibility, like I wouldn't, if I was staying in this career for another 10 years, would it still be a career that is out there? Maybe, maybe not. Nobody knows what the future is. But this program, and coming back around to this was something that the concept I came up with, and then got to actually, work with a wonderful Rick Gomez. Some of you may know him. I have taken a class with him. But in this case, creating something that has actually, it seems to me works for the most part. But I get that it doesn't have a consistent output, and sometimes it messes up, and sometimes it answers the questions, and this is what we deal with when we're interacting with these chatbots, as we're doing at an API level, right? So I give it all this content, and then I give it a structure of a prompt to say, this is how I want you to interact. But I definitely have had a couple of you reach out to me with frustrations, specifically one. And I think this is probably what I'd want to just reiterate, even though we only have 2 more weeks. But because you all in this class have 2 attempts, after you do the first attempt, I would log out because there's a token that when you hit the authorize, we actually capture that token, and that token has to expire, and then we have to delete it. And in that management, if you start your first attempt, get through it, and then I think even just closing the browser doesn't clear it. And I think even if you authorize it, it still doesn't. That's why logging out is best. Now, what these are is UI issues, right? And we are dealing with Canvas, and it has its own particular way of doing things. Now, I guess I hear myself justifying why things don't work right. Yeah, probably true. Shouldn't be true. But here's the deal. And I think the other thing is that I know one of the things I've talked to some students about is that students don't want to tell instructors when things don't work right. And for a variety of reasons, mostly because I don't know why. And actually, that'd be a good thing to tell me here if you want to, or reach out to me and let me know. Because I've been trying to figure that out. I feel like I've tried to create an environment where you would, but maybe because you've only had me for this class, and I think students who have had me for other classes understand why, or have a better sense that how open I am to that. So I am. But here's what I'd like to know. All right, I'd like to know what worked well. Do you feel like they helped you extend or confirm, or right, and if you have to search for like what worked well, that's cool too, like, because for some of you they may not have worked well, but still I want to hear what you feel worked well. And by the way, use a heading 2 here, kind of like what I had you do last week, and then what needs improvement, right? So both of these worth 40 points. I do want at least a good paragraph here. And some would say that because of the way I'm asking for the feedback, it's not data that I can show for a verifiable data result. And it is definitely more anecdotal, if you know what I mean by that. But it is something that as we're looking, and I'm trying to get the campus to use something like this and deploy at a larger scale than beyond a couple of classes. I mean, all my classes use it, and I'm pretty much the test case for it, right? But we're trying to make the case to the campus, because here's the other thing, and I'll kind of end this part of the discussion, is there's other large companies looking to implement something like this and sell it to Canvas. And I'm like, no, let's just create this open source and let anybody do it. Because to me, that's the way we grow. Rather than, but I also understand I live in a world that, it's about making money at some level. We all have to survive. And anyway, I won't go into that. So anyway, do also a substantive reply to whichever comment. But again, please choose students who don't have a reply done already. Okay, last thing. Today I was looking at, here on this Saturday, what is today, the 26th? As you all are rolling into week 15, I looked, because I have done a lot of interviews. But I noticed going forward, I have very few people signed up. And I was already going to do this. But come the Friday the 2nd, okay? And here's what I want you to know. So by noon on Friday the 2nd, if you are not on the schedule, I'm going to place a 0 into the technical interview. Now that doesn't mean you can't take the interview. Remember that now, based on the timing, right? It's you only, I almost don't want to say this, but we only have one attempt you can make during this time, because I suspect now that I'm talking about this, that there's going to be more and more people lining up to do it. And I get it too. It's kind of like, you put it off as long as you can, or you haven't thought about it in a while, because we haven't talked about it in a little while. But if by that point, noon on May 2nd, if you're not on the schedule, then I will place that 0 there. You can still schedule yourself. I just want you to understand what that's going to do to your grade if you don't do it. And, again, students often ask, is something required? And the answer to that is it depends on your grade and how much of your grade is this specific item make up, right? And you could, we could collectively go in here. It's a simple syllabus, which, by the way, if you're going into Zoom, going into a Zoom session, it's always in here, right? So there's my Zoom link. But if you come down far enough, what you will see is the idea, importance of attendance. See, now I got to find it too. The importance of all right, here they go. Here we go, 25%. So by me putting that 0 in there, it will tell you if you don't do one, what it will do to your grade, so that you'll know and schedule accordingly. And here's the other thing about this, is that, and I've decided against what I originally thought, which was I'd cover more recent content. So this technical interview will cover the basics of single table querying, multiple table relating, and a little bit of setup. And that's what it will be, okay? So knowing that, if I was preparing for this, if I was a student looking to make sure I understand how to write a basic query with all the things, at least getting some more experience, but getting, sorry, let me complete my thought, getting more experience, or going back and reviewing some of the common SQL that we used, because I wouldn't give you something that we haven't used multiple times in this course as well, right? So the idea is not to trick you. This is not the idea of the technical interview. The technical interview is for you to see how well you can communicate and code based on a problem set or based on a data set that I give you. So, right? And if you choose not to, I just want you to know what it does to your grade. Okay. Week 16, and we only have one more, and it's a problem set, as I mentioned before, and I'm going to start I've already started working on it and thinking about it, and we're going to do it differently than how we've done other things. So that will be, I think, fun, but, different as well. It's good to end with different things because that's kind of the nature of things as it goes. All right, have a good one, and I'll talk to you later.